Everybody, it's Rebecca here at Wine Mermaids, and welcome to my February wrap-up. I read a total of 9 things in February. I read 2 audiobooks and 7 regular books, and which is improvement. It's the most I've read in a month in quite some time. So yay! I read a lot of short things and not so short things, very variety of books, I guess you could say. Overall, I had a 3.88 reading with 2 3-star reads, 2 3.5-star reads, 3 4-star reads, and then 2 5-star reads. So as always, I like to start at the bottom and work my way up as far as the ratings go. So we'll start with the 3-star reads. So first up, I have The Reason I Jump by Naoki Higashida, which is a first-person account of what it's like to have autism. So the author, Naoki Higashida, is at the time a teenage boy with autism, and he wrote this book with the help of like a technology like keyboard type thing that has the different Japanese characters on it because he is a Japanese. He answers a lot of questions about what it's like to have autism and why does he do the things that he does and things like that. But he also includes a couple short stories that he's written, and it's very enlightening to look at the inside of the brain of a person with autism, especially a person such as this author is Naoki, because he is nonverbal, so he has very limited communication skills, and to be able to see all that's going on beyond that and to see that he is very much just like the rest of us in a lot of ways, it was very eye-opening, it was very enlightening. There are some controversies and some questions about did he really write it, regardless of how much maybe things got elaborated upon in the translation. If you are interested in that kind of thing, if you want to read about what it's like to have autism, or if you know a person and you're trying to understand them better, I know that the translator, they fell in love with it because it was a way for them to understand their own son. And so while it's not the case for everybody with autism, because everybody is different and it affects everybody in a different way, I still think it's very interesting. Other 3-star read is also nonfiction, and it was Beyond Magenta by Susan Kuklin, and this one is the story of transgender teens. So they're all nonfiction stories. They're stories as told to this author. They're all over the spectrum. So you have people who identify as male, people who identify as female, people who identify somewhere in the middle on the spectrum, you have he's, she's, theys, all sorts of things. So this year we're pushing on diverse reads. It's a big thing, and I totally support that, and so this was one of my attempts to do that, I guess you could say, and to learn more about what it's like to be transgender and to be on that spectrum and to not know how to fit in where you fit in and to not be the gender that you were born at. So I did really enjoy it. I liked reading these different teens' perspectives and stories, but it was, again, I only gave it 3 because I felt like I needed more. Like I didn't really get out of it what I was expecting to get out of it, and I think it was just very limited to a certain area in the country and a certain type of teen, as opposed to the wide variety of transgender teens and people that there are. And so I did like it. I felt like I learned things from it as well, but it wasn't like, I guess it just wasn't what I was expecting. Next book is Girls in the Moon by Janet McNally. I did get this book from Book of the Month, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 3.5. So we're into my 3.5 stars now. And it's basically the story of this young girl, she's a this teenage girl whose mother and father were in this like famous rock band in the 90s. I kind of akin it to like Fleetwood Mac, and I might be doing that because that's what Mac said in his review, but I'm just gonna roll with it because it's this like 90s rock band with, you know, the female and male like co-lead singers and guitarist and this whole era of 90s vibe, and I just really like that. And so she and her sister obviously are the product of this relationship, and their parents are now divorced, and so this main character is going to New York to visit her sister who's living there in college, and kind of trying to discover her past and reconnect with her father and with her mother through their band, and she's trying to kind of make sense of it all. It also kind of tells the story of the mother and father, but in a backwards sense, which didn't really make sense to me, but that's fine, whatever. Basically, it's like a love story to like 90s rock and roll and like New York and friendship and sisterhood and family, and I really enjoyed it. It was very poetic, this writing style. There's a lot of like text messages that are written as song lyrics and things like that, and it's just very beautiful the way it's written. It doesn't really have much of like a plot, I guess you could say. She goes to visit her sister, and that's about the extent of it, some adventures in New York and whatnot, a little baby love story, but overall I just really liked it. I liked the feel of it, I liked the vibe of it, I liked all of that. It wasn't mind-blowing, and it wasn't anything that really like, I couldn't believe what I was reading, but I enjoyed it, so I gave it a 3.5. My other 3.5 star read is Three Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake, and I was really excited about this one. I didn't really know much about it going into it. I was kind of also skeptical about it because I was kind of on a like sick of YA mood at the time, but I'd heard good things from some of my friends on Booktube and whatnot, so I decided to give it a chance, and it turns out like half of us were reading it at the same time anyway, so I just kind of went with it, and I ended up, it started out really slow. If you don't know, it's the story of three sisters who are all queens, and one of them must rule, and in order to kind of be that one ruler, the one has to kill the other two, so there's like the last queen standing is the one that will be the ruler kind of thing. So you have magical powers like elemental powers and nature and like poison, so you have different kind of like abilities, I guess, that they each different have, and it's like a fight. But this is definitely like the setup book for the showdown, so it was very slow to get into because there's a lot of characters and a lot of female characters, which is awesome, and like this like female dominated world and land where like there are queens and the women are in power and the men are just kind of the side characters, which is great. I loved it, but there were so many and so much backstory that it took a while to get into it, a lot of world building, but once it got into it, I couldn't put it down. Like once I got to like that moment towards the like middle to the end, I had to finish it, and it leaves you on cliffhangers and you have so many questions. I can't wait to read the next one, Darkthrone, I think it is, which comes out like at the end of the year because I want to know what happens. I want to know what happens. So yeah, 3.5 because very, very, very slow and then epic at the end. So yeah, plus it was very cool. Like I liked the powers, I liked the world building, I liked the characters too. It was just a lot. It was just a lot. Next up, I have In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. I buddy read this one with Trina from Between Chapters. Last year I had read The Woman in Cabin 10 and I recommended it to her to read, and she really enjoyed it in a sense, and so we both wanted to check out more of Ruth Ware's work, so we decided to buddy read this one together because it's the only other book of hers that's out at the moment. It's a thriller. It's a predictable thriller because both of us were kind of like, we just kind of saw it coming. But it was enjoyable. It was an enjoyable, predictable thriller. It was not at all what I was expecting it to be, like at all, but I enjoyed it. I did. I blew through it. I liked the main character a lot better than the one from Women in Cabin 10. I liked the mystery even though it was predictable, and it kind of felt like at times I was like, really? Where's this going? But again, it was fun. It's a thriller. I don't want to give too much away, so I'm not going to, but girl goes on bachelorette party weekend. Just mysterious things happen. We'll leave it there. Both of my audiobooks are also in the 4-star range, which is pretty typical for me with audiobooks. I don't know, they're never like 5 stars, but they're usually a pretty standard 4. So the two that I have, the first one is The Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher. Last month I read her first one, which is Wishful Drinking, and then this one was her last one, which is Princess Diarist, and this one is all about Star Wars and her experience with Star Wars. It talks about leading up to getting the part, her entire affair with Harrison Ford, which was hilarious and heartbreaking, and I loved it. And then the end of it is about like how Star Wars has impacted her life. Interesting thing about this one is the middle section, which is narrated by her daughter, Billie Lourd, which is her diaries from when she was on set of Star Wars, the very first one in London, and during this affair with Harrison Ford, and they're all very beautiful poems for the most part. It's poems and it's very beautiful, and I had no idea that she could write this way, and I was just like taken aback. Like I want to get a copy of the book just so I can have these poems on reference because I just thought they were really creative and beautiful and heartbreaking. And as like, you know, we've all been there, we've all been teenagers, we know what it feels like to kind of go through this, like, well, maybe we don't all know, but I know what it's like to go through that phase of like kind of does he really want me? Am I wasting my time? Is this whole kind of thing worth it? I'm pining after someone who's not pining after me, and it was beautiful the way that her daughter read it, especially now with with Carrie's death and everything. It was brilliant and I loved it. If you like Star Wars or Carrie Fisher, definitely check it out. And the audio, again, she reads it, her daughter reads it, and it's Carrie Fisher. It's funny, but it's also beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. The other audiobook I read was Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. This one's pretty popular around the audiobook world, at least right now. A lot of people have been requesting it. It took me a while to get it, especially now with post-election and everything. It's the story of J.D. Vance, who grew up in rural Ohio and Kentucky, and it's this hillbilly culture, this hillbilly vibe, and how it impacts everybody around it, and how it's like poor, but it's a poor that they don't want to admit is poor and they don't want to take the steps to remedy it. They're just gonna blame other people. And it's basically Trump's America in a lot of ways. And so it's very understanding for the election and for what happened, and regardless of whatever side you're on the election, it's very helpful for understanding of that. And it's also kind of a cry to the people in those cultures to say, hey, you need to stop blaming other people for things that you are also doing like poorly, like talking about a guy who got a job and he really needed this job, but he quit it because he didn't want to have to go in on like 9 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And so it's kind of like that balance of things, and how J.D. Vance it was basically his story of growing up here and how he got out of it, and how it could have been a completely different story if one or two things had gone differently in his life. So it's very enlightening, it's very interesting, and I did really enjoy reading it. It was really good. I recommend it. Now, I did have 2 5-star reads for this month. The first one is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, and it's basically a science fiction story that looks into the idea and it examines the idea of regret and what if I had done this one thing instead of this other thing. I don't want to give away too much as far as like a summary because I don't want to spoil anything. There's a lot of twists and turns and tricks and things that you don't necessarily see coming, but I loved it. This is science fiction like at its greatest for me. It's not spacey, it's like science-y in a good way, and it's got like multi-dimensional travel type things and a cool box, and it's just really, really, really cool. It makes you question yourself and your life and the world that you're living in, and it totally messes with your mind in all the best ways. So I highly recommend it if you are in for that kind of thing, if you like science fiction, if you like to see the world in a different way. Dark Matter. It was awesome. I loved it. Yes, there are problems with it, 100%. I don't care. I loved it. 5 stars. Finally, my last book of the month, the last book I finished and my last book to talk about, my last 5-star read, is of course A Conjuring of Light by Victoria Schwab, or V.E. Schwab. It's the 3rd and final book in the Shades of Magic trilogy, which I love. I've loved it since the first one. I've loved all of it, every moment of this, and I loved A Conjuring of Light just like the other 2. It's 600 and something pages. It's a chunker, but it's worth it. I took it slowly because I didn't want to rush through it, also because life was really busy that week and like I didn't have time, and every time I picked it up I would like fall asleep because of life. But I also wanted to savor it, and I'm glad that I did because I felt like I really got to enjoy the world for that one last time, for that one little bit. However, there is one unresolved question, so I'm hoping that and Victoria Schwab knows about it because she tweeted about it, which made me like, oh yeah, which makes me feel like maybe there might be like a spin-off coming, and crossing my fingers because I want more of this world. I want more Kel, I want more Lila, I want more Alucard and Colin and Rye and everybody in the world. I want them all the time. So good. If you haven't picked up anything from Shades of Magic yet, do it. Do it. It was a really great conclusion to a really great trilogy. It hit me in all the ways I wanted it to hit me. It's happy, it's sad, it's heartbreaking, it's perfect. And I loved it 100%. So I'm really glad that it was the last thing I ended the month with. It's really good. Well, that's it for my February wrap up. Let me know if you have read any of these, what your thoughts are, if you're planning on reading them, and what your favorite book that you read in February was. Because, you always need new good book recommendations. And I hope you are having a lovely day. Thanks for watching. That's it from me today. I'll see you next time.